Hi, Pistol Pete here, Pistol Pete Podcast. Today we have Doc Scofield for our third interview, and I just want you guys to know that he was the team manager for GT Bicycles back in the day. He was the father of Jeff Scofield, which is a little awesome, little BMX, actually dominating force back in the day. There was other riders that were always pushing him to the limit, but he was a pretty dominating force back in the day, Jeff Scofield. But his father is Doc Scofield. His name is Gary Scofield. He was a general practitioner doctor, and he was always out there at the races. And he was one of the very first team managers for the GT bicycle. I think the first one. And we're going to find out in this interview today. I'll be asking him some questions about how he dealt with all these different kids, all the different attitudes, different people that were brought up in different, different neighborhoods, different mom and dads. So they all have different kinds of personalities, and how he became the team manager and how he dealt with those people, and also how they started traveling and how it was in its infant stages when it started, and how it's very competitive even on a local level. When we started BMX, it was always at the bike shop. There was all kinds of different new innovative bicycle parts coming out in the early 70s, and then started getting way more professional as years progressed. And today I want to welcome Mr. Scofield to give us some story and feedback of back what happened back in the day, so that everybody can take a time warp back to where he was and where BMX was at the time when his son was a little kid, and how he got involved and what he did for the sport and for a lot of other kids that their mom and dads were like not able to get to the events and do things. So basically, I'd just like you guys to enjoy this interview. And also, if you want, hit the subscribe button and the like button, and we'll be bringing you more stories and innovative ideas. And that's what this whole podcast is about. All right. God bless you guys. Talk to you soon. Peace out.
We've got some hot heavies on the line.
We certainly do, Scott. Keep an eye in the center of that gate.
Competition, Pete Loncarevich, past national champion.
Pistol Pete Loncarevich taking the win.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the wacky world of BMX according to the Pistola. Your host, the four-time national #1 pro and a world champion. Give it up for Pistol Pete!
I'll see you next year in the winner's circle.
Welcome to the Pistol Pete Podcast. Today we have no other than Jeff Scofield's father, which his notorious name was for being the team manager for GT Racing back in the day, was Doc Scofield. His name is Gary Scofield. He's a doctor, and he's also was the first team manager of the GT Racing team, and he put together all the great riders and got to travel with all the amateurs. He had nothing to do with any of the pros. He basically we'll get started on this interview, and welcome and thank you for doing this podcast today with us, Gary. And so Doc, fill us in with timelines and stuff like that. So please tell us like what year Jeff started racing, and then we'll go on from there. Go ahead.
Okay.
Welcome.
Okay. Well, it's nice to see you, Pete. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah.
Over 40 years, I guess.
Yeah.
So Jeff started racing in about 1980. He was 7 years old, and we went to. I'd never heard of BMX before, only the conventional sports, and so we heard there was a racetrack over in Azusa. We lived in Whittier, California at the time. So, Jeff. This is a story my wife and I tell. It's interesting. When Jeff was 2 years old, there was a little 16-inch bike out in the front yard that belonged to some other kid. And he wandered outside, and I went to find him, and he was riding the bike without training wheels. And he had never ridden a bike before. And I told my wife, come out here, you won't believe this. And this little kid was riding a 16-inch bike with no training wheels, with nobody helping him. He didn't know how to stop. So he just kind of fell in the grass. But So he liked bikes, obviously, from a very young age, and was pretty talented. It was pretty talented riding them at 2 years old. So when I heard about the BMX thing, we didn't know much about it. So we heard there was a track in Azusa, and we went over there, and we had a steel frame junker bike that I got from a pawn shop or something. And we went over there, and here were all these kids in leathers, custom helmets, and Jeff's in Levi's and a t-shirt.
Yeah.
And some funky, I don't know what the helmet was. Maybe, I don't know, it was a snowboard helmet or something. And so I met the guy that was running the track, and his name was Richard Long. And I asked him how it worked. He said, you got to sign up and all this stuff. So basically we signed up, but there was no seven beginner class. So he had to race 7 intermediate, I guess novice, I guess they called it. So, and he had coaster brakes, by the way. He didn't have no regular hand brakes. But anyway, so I think there was 8 kids there. So he got on the gate, and I told him when the gate drops, just take off. And he took off and beat everybody in the novice class with coaster brakes and a steel frame crap bike. And then we kept going back, and he kept winning and stuff. So Richard Long came to me and said, hey, look, you should get a better bike, And I said, well, what's a better bike? I don't know. He said, well, you get a chromoly frame. And there was a guy there at the time. His name was Jim Melton, if you probably remember Jim Melton.
I remember Jim.
Yeah, JM.
Great guy, great guy. Rest in peace. Yeah.
Yep. JMC. So I bought the frame, and I took it home, and he showed my wife, and she goes, well, where's the rest of the bike? I go, well, you got to put the wheels, you get the other stuff separate. And I told her the frame was $140. She's like, $140? There's no wheels or handlebars or nothing, So anyway, then we bought all the stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And we went back out. So then I went to Vera's Leathers, if you remember Vera.
I do remember Vera leathers. Those are heavy things like Bill Walters and all those leathers were the first beginner ones, and the Bates and all those old school ones that came from motocross were just so heavy.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So we heard about Vera's. So we went over there and had some leathers made. And then there was a guy named Doug Purcell who owned a bike shop in Hacienda Heights called Hacienda Bikes. And the Mariettis raced for him early on, Rinker and stuff.
Right.
So he asked if Jeff would ride for his bike shop, and he would pay the entry fees or whatever. So I said, yeah, I guess, I don't know what the deal. He said, well, there's a national coming up in Anaheim. And of course we bought a magazine, started looking into it, and we saw that there was some kid Jeff's age, a guy named Aaron Stevens raced for Diamondback.
Yeah.
And big name little kid at the time.
I was on the same team. Yeah.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah, I was.
So we went to Anaheim, and lo and behold, of course, they didn't have dirt in there. They wouldn't allow dirt. So that it was on cement, which was weird, really weird, But we said, what the heck, let's go ahead and race. And my wife was there, and Jeff's brother, Eric. So there was a bunch of 7-year-olds there, and as I remember it now, he got into the main, and then they drew cards for your place on the gate. He got the 8th lane, which is the outside from the first turn, and he took off, and the gates dropped, and Aaron Stevens and a lot of other kids that were known, and he just blew right by everybody and took the first turn all by himself. And then he was leading the whole race, and then he slipped out and crashed and got last. But I know he had promise at that point, he looked pretty good coming out of the gate. So and the one thing about Jeff that everybody used to ask me is that, does he lift weights? I said, are you kidding me? He's 7 years old. 7-year-old kids don't lift weights. But, he had like kind of a developed frame, little, kid.
Muscle man.
Yeah, just the way he was, it's the way he was born. So basically, and he was quick, real quick reflexes. So for BMX to be, wiry, strong to your weight and quick, particularly in the younger age groups, it's a pretty big advantage. Like the whole shot. Obviously, we learned right away the whole shot was absolutely important, probably the most important thing at that point. Well, anyway, so long story short, we went back to Azusa. We were after that national, and I didn't know at the time, but Richard Long was kind of looking at him, and now he was an expert. So then we went to the Corona downhill. You remember that race?
Yeah, yeah.
It was
I was there.
It was the one where Bronco Beckringer, somebody ran into a telephone pole going like 50 miles an hour.
Yeah, Mom's right. Harry Larry. With
Harry Larry.
Weirdo, remember that helmet, that Mano helmet? It was like made out of like styrofoam, and he smacked his head.
Yeah.
Actually, I was jumping the pro section right there and tried to do it too because he was on my team and I was younger, and he came up short, hit a telephone pole head on. I remember that. Great times.
Harry Larry, that's right. But anyway, so Jeff was hauling ass down. Now, that thing was straight down.
Yeah.
And that was a fast track. Pretty scary, I guess, for you guys. But so he won, and then this guy named Steve Johnson came up to me, and he said, "Would you be interested in having Jeff ride for Torker?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I guess. What does it mean? Well, he gets a free bike, uniform, all that stuff." And I thought, well, okay. And now we didn't talk much about travel at that time. I was a little bit worried as a 7-year-old, But he sent us a bike to our house, fully made out bike, And Jeff was riding it, and he goes, "I hate this bike. I can't stand the way the top tube is just a weird bike, And I go, "Well, it's free, dude. I mean, come on, So then basically we took it out to Azusa. He didn't really like it. That's when Richard came up and said, "Hey, where'd you get that bike?" And I said, "We got it from this Torker guy. He wants Jeff to ride for Torker." And Richard says, "Nah, I want to ride for my company." I said, "You have a company?" He goes, "Yeah, I have a company. It's called GT Bikes." I said, GT Bicycles. I said, "Okay. Well, is it a better deal?" I said, "Well, why don't you let him ride one of our bikes and you'll see." So he got a GT, little mini GT, and he loved it, of course. And the rest is history at that point, because Richard said to me, "I'd like to be on our factory team, and we're going to race in Amarillo, Texas." And I said, "Yeah, okay, who's going with him?" I mean, he's only 7 years old, He said, "Well, we need a team manager. You want to go with him? You can be the team manager." I said, I thought, I have a job, but I thought, well, yeah, I could do that. And so he said, "Well, we have this team already. These guys, a guy named Pop Lemon." I don't know if you remember Pop Lemon.
Yeah, I sure do.
Little chubby kid. Then we had Andy Patterson. And then we had a pro, I think his name was Bart McDaniel from up in Washington or something.
Correct.
And then Jeff, and then Danny Nelson was going with us. I don't remember if I think he was riding for Powerlight at the time or one of GT's sub bikes, but Danny's dad, Bill Nelson, went with us. So it was me, Bill, Pop, McDaniels met us there, Andy Patterson, Jeff, and we went to Amarillo. And I heard about Team Trophy, how you enter Team Trophy. So you have to put your riders down. You try to put the riders that have the most rider count, because that counts towards Team Trophy. So I put together a Team Trophy. So in Amarillo, I truthfully, I can't remember what anybody else did, but I know that Jeff tripled there. So he won the class, the open, and the trophy dash, which they call a triple. I didn't even know what that meant, but he got like 3 trophies. So, and we came back, and Richard Long. Now I had a relationship with Richard Long more because he was the guy that was in charge of the team and stuff. And Gary Turner was the fabricating guy. So he was out in the shop, and I met him, but we weren't talking all the time. So anyway, when we got back from Amarillo, Richard was just like stoked, because we had Jeff won. I think somebody else got Andy won, or somebody else won. Pop, it was a different story. he drank too much grape soda in the van on the way, and Cheetos. He was throwing up, and I wasn't being a very good steward of him. His dad, I remember his dad. But anyway, so when we got back, he said, "Okay, we got another race in another couple of weeks in Salt Lake City, and we're going to take the GT van and we're going to drive to Salt Lake City." So we went. Salt Lake City also was great. Jeff tripled again. And then now they're really stoked, So we came back and he said, "Okay, our next race is in 2 weeks in Elkhart, Indiana." I go, "I'm not driving to Elkhart, Indiana, man." He goes, "No, you're not going to drive. You're going to fly there." I'm like, "We're going to fly to Elkhart? How are we going to take the bikes?" You break them down, you put them in this box. So I'm learning all this stuff as we go. I didn't know about it. So we went to Elkhart, and it was sweltering humidity near South Bend there, and we had a great success there. Several guys won. Jeff tripled again. We came back, and then I at that point now, after we flew to Elkhart, everything was flying from that point on. So we were flying all over the place, and Jeff was tripling all over at almost every national. And so Merle Menninger, who was like one of the announcers, gave him the title Little Mr. Awesome, which followed him through a lot of the races after that. Particularly, the ABA races, he was Little Mr. Awesome, Little Mr. Awesome. The whole time I'm thinking, where is this headed? I didn't have any idea. It was taking up a lot of time. Started to become every other weekend. We're flying to another city every other weekend.
Right.
And I'm, and my work schedule I worked at a clinic. I had a partner, and so I would tell him, I'm not going to take vacations. I'm going to take off on Friday and Monday. Okay, that's it. Friday, Monday. He goes, well, whatever you want to do, man. It's up to you. So we'd leave on Friday, get to the race, get to the hotel, put the bikes together, go set up the tarp at the racetrack, race Saturday, Sunday, come home Monday. I go back to work, wait a week, do it again. We did that. So that went on from 1981 to 1987. So for 6 years, we went to every national, including NBL nationals. We went to the ABA Grands, obviously, every year. That's where we had our Thanksgiving dinner at Denny's.
Yes.
Every year. The family
Yeah.
would come, his grandma and grandpa would come, my wife, and then my other son, my daughter, who was young, Stacy, she came. Anyway, so, and I told Jeff, when we were racing, he was, the BMX races, when you're waiting for motos at a national, it's kind of a drag. You probably know.
Right. Oh yeah, I'm still doing it. I'm still racing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You gotta know. You gotta find stuff to do. And
right.
When you're at South Point, at your age, you can go gamble and fart around.
Right.
But when there's a 8-year-old kid, so I would let Jeff drive. He was driving the rental car in the parking lot when he was 8 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, you develop a lot of skills when you're a BMXer. I mean, all BMX racers at a top level are great athletes at anything they do, basically. I want to ask you one thing, Gary.
Go ahead.
Gary, I want to ask you is that, how was it? Because back then, they didn't have a title for everybody's behavior back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got some kid with autism that's on the spectrum or whatever, and people would let their kids just go on these summer tours and just with strangers, they don't even know them, there's no background check. I mean when you look back at it, it just worked out. It seeked its level, like water does. And it's really amazing for you dealing with all these different personalities and then having a kid that's like a super stud, where I remember Little Awesome. I remember him always flexing, and then later he got into mountain bikes, and then we became good friends. And then that's what I got to hang out with you guys when I was in my 30s and stuff, in my 40s. And it was awesome. It's just great. And your son was such a dominating force in BMX, and I just want everybody to also know that you're one of the very first ones, and everybody loves to hear these stories about what you went through, because these days it's so much different, and there's not as much team support. It's basically like a little bit like Little League. Everybody's helping out each other and trying to achieve a goal. It's not so much that the kids, I don't think, really look up to the pros as much as they used to. Right. It's not as exciting, I guess. It is exciting to me. If you get into the modern stuff, then you respect it. But if you come from the old school, you're like, no, man, that stuff sucks, because they got asphalt turns. That's not BMX. It's basically like if you were to take an ice rink and throw a double jump in the middle of the hockey rink. You know what I mean? It would make for some extreme watching, but it's not what it is. It's just like BMX in the Olympics. That's just Olympic, BMX. That's not on the daily. It's not what the basic real BMX is. I mean, I enjoy all that new stuff, but also keep it real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Keep it real. And a basic indoor track, that could be a championship track. Everything's evolved. It's a lot more different. It's growing. The sport's huge. And so let's get back to your interview. And thank you for sharing all these great moments.
Well, I can tell you, okay, we had, so the part that I did not like about it, and I know that there's going to there's haters out there, but as the team manager at the end of every year, you'd have to reassess your team, right?
Right.
And I would have to call and drop people off the team that weren't performing.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about BMX.
Well, Richard Long was the Al Davis of BMX, okay? Just win, baby. And he wanted his company to be big, and it got big, as you know.
Yes.
Really big.
Huge.
I mean, both him and Gary became multimillionaires. So, and GT became a huge brand. But if a rider was getting beat by another factory rider, then he wanted that guy. You know?
No,
if Pete Loncarevich is beating Tommy Brackens, he wants Pete Loncarevich. You know. So it was different in the pros because in the pros there was a lot of parity. So, you know, you guys, one guy would win one time, another guy another time. There was some dominant, like you were one of the dominant guys, but they weren't winning. It's like in golf, you know, you weren't winning every pro main. You know, you could get a bad start, slip a pedal, whatever. But anyway, so we had lots of riders. I'll give you a list here. Pop Lemon, we had Danny Nelson, Bart McDaniel, Andy Patterson. Jason Donnell was on our team when he was a little kid. Travis Chippers, but I have a story about him that's unbelievable. Mark Perez, Nelson Shanity, Kevin Hall, Rob Fade, Deanna Edwards, Leon and Yolanda Williams, which that was a trip with their dad. Greg Hill and Tommy Brackens and Craig Bark. We had back-to-back national #1 team, back-to-back 83, 84. I don't think anybody's done it ever since. And the ABA, in their website, they called GT the winningest team in the history of BMX. GT, the winningest team. And we were winning, you know, everybody, you know, Diamondback and Hutch and all those other people, you know, they wanted to say they were the winningest team. And they had good teams. They had good teams. They had good riders, you know. But I'll give you this. You're talking about the responsibility of taking particularly little kids on trips on airplanes. Well, Travis Chippers, who was a 6-year-old, was pretty fast. He was winning a lot of races in his age group. So Richard wanted to pick him up. So we picked him up. I had to talk to his parents. And they said, yeah, it's cool going with you. You know, we know you'll take care of him. Now, I wouldn't have let my kid do that, but they were cool with it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so we went to Monroe, Louisiana for a race, an ABA race. And we went to on the night before the race, we went to a movie in a multi-theater complex with about, 10 or 11 screens. And I'm sitting with all the kids, including Travis is sitting next to me, and then Jeff and Danny and others. We're watching whatever stupid movie. And Travis had to go to the bathroom. So I said it was either Jeff or Danny Nelson, can you take him to the bathroom and bring him back? They took him to the bathroom. One of the kids came out and left Travis in there and had his back to the bathroom, and then Travis walked out before they saw him. They went in to get him. He wasn't in there. Came back and told me that Travis wasn't in the bathroom. I said, well, where is he? They go, I don't know where he's at. I'm like, oh, God, he got kidnapped. And I'm going to have to call his parents and tell him his kid's kidnapped. So I'm like, I'm just like going nuts. I don't care about this stupid movie anymore. So I'm walking in all these theaters. I walk in this one theater. I go down to the row that we were sitting in, and there's a man with a beard, dark beard. I had a dark beard at the time. And Travis sitting next to him. And I said, Travis. He goes, Doc. I go, what are you doing? He goes, oh, I thought that was you. He sat next to some guy there, and I just got him. I took him back. From that point forward, no little kid goes to the bathroom without me. I hope their parents don't see this podcast, but it was horrendous. I was so frightened. I mean, I bet. I really thought he was kidnapped. I thought he was kidnapped for sure.
You never know.
Nope, you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But anyway, so yeah, like you said though, Pete, those were different times. Yeah, the support was different back then. I mean, some of the pro riders were probably making pretty good money.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Along with contingencies, with salaries and stuff. And Jeff was making money. I mean, he was making $100 a win. So every weekend he's pulling down $500 to $600 every other weekend.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I know. The good old days.
Now GT didn't want people to know about that, but and then they bought him a brand new Suzuki or RM60, whatever it was, a motorcycle. We went out and rode. We rode with Greg Hill and some people out there at Baseline, you know, over there by.
Yeah. Those are the best times.
Yeah, he loved motorcycles, and he at one point he said, you know, I want to race in Carlsbad. I want to race motorcycles now. I don't want to race BMX anymore. So I took him to Carlsbad. They still had racing out of Carlsbad. You know where that's at, right?
Right. Yes.
And you know, motocross, real motocross.
Yeah, real motocross. I actually raced there. Yeah.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, he had this little 60, and he was going to race the 60 class as a 9-year-older. We were sitting by the chain link fence by one of the straightaways, and he was sitting with me, and some kid, like a 10 or 11-year-old, crashed in front of us and had a seizure on the track in front of us, like just spazzing out, you know. And Jeff was staring at him like going, "Whoa!" I go, "What's up?" He goes, "Oh, I don't want to race motorcycle." But we didn't race. We watched the races.
Right.
He was signed up, but he didn't race. So anyway,
those are great stories, man. Like back in the day, there was a lot more support. These days now, like a kid does well, they're like, "Oh, we'll give you 50% off." So like, I'm just pointing out things that, you know, back in the day, you know, UPS would daily come to my house when I was on Diamondback when I was a young boy.
Bringing you stuff,
bringing me stuff. I mean, the guy knew my name, and I was just a little kid, you know. And like you said, we were getting contingencies. And I'm gonna have to post one of my contracts because I think I came across my contract with Diamondback when I was 15 years old, and I was getting the same kind of thing, contingency program, and I was tripling just like Jeff was. So I was saving up a lot of money, so I was able to, you know, buy a car. And you can't do that these days. You know, it's a different sport. There's not as many people that don't have a budget. You have to have a budget. It's starting to turn into like a motorcycle sport where you have to have money to be able to travel because the sponsors, there's so many bike manufacturers out there that there's only a few top ones that are making enough money to be able to help back. Even though there's lots of people, there's too many manufacturers, and it's still a great sport because everybody, you know, it's BMX, it's family. And that's what I love the most. It brings people together. It's great.
And there's always new kids coming, right? Kids are being born. Kids are becoming 5 and 6 and 7. They want to race bikes. So I knew it would keep going, but it has changed dramatically in terms of sponsorship and money. But there's no big companies out there making tons of money that can afford to do that anymore. I mean, remember we flew to Slagharn. We raced the World Championship there in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And that was a big deal. You know, I'd never flown 13 hours across the ocean, and that was a big deal being in Europe. And I mean, Jeff, when we got to Europe, Jeff was like, you know, like Lance Armstrong in terms of popularity.
Yes.
Kids were they're asking autographs, and he was freaking out. They wanted to buy his jerseys from him for $50 if he'd sign his jersey. And it was out of control. It was like a rock star thing. The kids read magazines in Europe. They love cycling, you know, so they knew who he was. And of course, all the riders from all over the world were like, "Oh, we're going to beat Jeff," you know, and they didn't. But just like this guy, Andrew Soul, I remember, was from Michigan, and he was the best East Coast rider in Jeff's age group. And everybody was talking like, you know, if Jeff ever comes out here, Andrew Soul, just rip him up, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we went to the Silver Dome, which you probably went to.
Yes.
And Greg was on GT at the time. And Jeff got in the main with Andrew Soul and just blew him away, you know, like beat him by 8 or 9 bike lengths. And so that was the end of that talking, you know.
Yeah, well, definitely. You know, it's cool to have, you know, a proud dad like you are, and like it's awesome because that's what it's all about. It's about like supporting family, helping each other, and even helping other people too. You know, anybody who can help. You know, it's great, and I love it because it brings you together with your son, and it's like it's great times, and like you can't buy that stuff. It's just like it's just created. It's created, and it's timing in the right place, right time. I think like our time was probably a lot better than it is now because it was you know, wasn't so much you know, social media, like with all kinds of things making people think, is this real or is this not real, you know? And people trying to keep up with the Joneses, and you know, some people don't even know what that means anymore. But it doesn't matter. That's just showing that I'm older now. And I am, and it's great, and it's awesome. That's why a lot of BMX, that's why I love to have you on here, because you're not just a good team manager and a good guy and a good father and a good husband, and you know, and a grandpa, and everything else. You know, we share a lot of similarities. You know what I mean? Except my kid isn't. he does jujitsu. He does Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He tried BMX, but his growth spurt was too late. He wasn't that little kid like you know, like Sco. Like that's what your son. That's what I call him, Sco. Everybody calls him, "What's up, Sco?" You know. And he's a great athlete too. You know, he's a great guy too. Great, loving human being. You know, it's great. He developed a good kid, a good family, and that's from BMX. It provides that. You know, it helps that. It incubates that. Like it's a foundation. You know. And same with me. If it wasn't for mom and dad, I would have never probably made it out there. I would have probably made it out there, but I don't know if I would have been as consistent. And with all my energy, I would have probably been, you know, down the wrong path. And I'm glad that my dad was old school and he was supportive, and my mom too. And they were supportive, and I just did the rest. Like, you know, like you go out there, people start noticing if you start dominating and stuff. And at first it was just fun. And then pretty soon people are like you said, hey, you want to go here? We'll pay for everything. We're doing really well. And that's what, that's like the golden era of BMX, really, when you really think of it, not as a pioneer part, but when the sport, I thought it was going to shift into another, you know, paradigm, but it didn't. You know, it's kind of like still, it's kind of being like controlled to a certain extent to the ability of what it's doing and what's providing for other people. So these old school dudes are coming back and they're doing vintage racing, and so is the USA BMX. So there are old school people out there, and there'll probably be, you know, like people that ride quads and people ride dirt bikes. There's different stroke for different folks, you know?
Well, even Brian Lopes and Carter and those guys, they go up to Sea Otter and they'll race the downhill up there even though those guys they got to be 50 something years old.
They are.
Something like that. The last time I saw everybody, I had a dark beard and you guys were like 20, and now I'm 73. You guys are like 50s and 60s, you know?
Yeah, you're looking good, though. You're looking good, Doc. Take care of yourself.
I feel good. I mean, I played basketball.
Nice.
I shoot hoop. Well, I shot hoops for years and years and years.
I know.
And I got to Denver, tore my labrum, had a meniscus tear, different things. So now we play pickleball. So we're the old school sport. But there's a lot of people that play pickleball.
No, I know. I was
all
on
over
the airplane.
world.
I was on the airplane the other day, and there was this lady, and she asked me, "Hey, you'd be good at pickleball," and I didn't even know what it was. She goes, "What's that?" And then she educated me that they're kind of like converting, I guess, tennis courts into this new phenom. Like, you know, it's like that whatever the cornholing.
Well, it's not kind of weird cornhole, but no, pickleball is a lot of fun. If you started playing, you'd love it. You'd love it. You know, because you're quick and stuff, and you're athletic, you could be good at it. And there's a lot of younger people doing it now too. It's not just old people. So it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So what are you doing these days?
Well, okay. So I play pickleball. I work at an urgent care a couple days a month just to keep the brain active. So that's how I ride mountain bikes. So I don't want to go into too much history, but I had a heart attack playing basketball when I was about 9 years ago. So I was 64. So I was playing full court basketball in Brea, where we lived in California. I had some chest pain and a little more back pain than chest. But, you know, being in the medical field, I knew there's something wrong. I ended up going to the hospital. I got a couple of stents. So I've been fine ever since then. But I got an electric bike, a Trek Powerfly 5.
Beautiful.
It's a great bike. It's just front suspension, it's hardtail. But I can ride that thing for miles. I mean, it goes about 45 miles on a charge, but I can go uphill, straight up, down, everywhere. So we ride mountain bikes in the summer, and then we play pickleball in the winter indoors. We have a gym here live in a gated community here. We have a gym that we can play in, and my wife loves pickleball. And we come to Southern California to see my middle son, Eric. He's married. He's got 2 kids. So we come down to San Clemente. We stay at a hotel there called the Beachcomber, right on the beach. It's overlooking the pier. It's really neat.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So anyway, we do that, and basically, I'm watching March Madness like everybody else.
Right.
That kind of stuff. Now, I knew you were doing flooring and stuff like that, but we don't want to. I know this is not to get into what you do, but
I do. I actually
to make a living.
Right. I make a living with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu nowadays, but I'll let you more about that. But hey, I just wanted to ask you one quick thing. So where did Jeff? Between you and your wife, right? Your wife and yourself. Yeah. Where does Jeff get his skills from? What do you say? Because, we always say, is it mom, dad? Where do you think?
Okay.
I don't want to start an argument.
I know she's sitting right here looking at me.
I know she is.
Okay, so the truth is, I played football in high school as a quarterback, and I think most of his skills come from me, but Milana is not quite as competitive. Like, I'll talk about type A versus, I'm a type A person, okay?
Yeah.
And she's more of a type CD, laid back, which is great because I need to calm down sometimes. And I'm just running 100 miles an hour all the time. I can't go to sleep at night even. But anyway, she got it from he got it
and
from
mom
me.
both. I'm just saying. I just was saying that because I knew she was standing right there.
Yeah, she's right here.
I just want, and you know what? Hello, and it's good to hear from both you guys. And,
well, we've been married for 52 years. 53 this year.
Golden, nice, congratulations. I mean, like it's incredible.
Got married when we were 20 years old. We got married. By the way, before I forget, I was naming all these riders. We did have a young rider that we really liked a lot. His dad was a little eccentric, but his name was Britt, a dude.
Yeah,
you remember.
I remember the name. Yes.
Yeah, he went on to ride for Hutch later because he wasn't getting enough of the limelight in the GT.
Right.
So he went on to Hutch to make his own name. And he ended up being a pretty good rider. And he actually went on and raced little motorcycles and later on. He lived down in Dana Point, down there near Salt Creek, down in Southern California.
Yeah.
When he was on the team, we used to go down there and visit and go to the ocean with him and stuff. But
that's great.
His dad was a dentist. His dad would come to the races with us. I don't think his dad's alive anymore, knowing how much he used to drink at the races. Right.
That'll take a toll on you.
Yeah. There was a lot of that going on.
Exactly. Well, hey, I just want to tell you that it was a great time talking to you, and I really want to thank you for coming on here and letting everybody know, because people are very intrigued by these stories, obviously, because you're my third podcast, and I thought about you because I think of you like family, because I think of Jeff. How he's doing, and he's doing great right now, and it's awesome. So I'm trying to get him. He's doing a little mountain biking, but I just want to thank you for that when I reached out to you, you were willing, hey, that's great. And another thing I want to say real quick is guys out there, Jeff Scofield and his father should both be in the Hall of Fame. The USA BMX, that's my opinion. And I believe it's everybody else's. There's a lot of people that are in there, but I think everybody should be comped on the head a little bit about that and realize that that Jeff Scofield was a badass, and his dad was a badass also by dealing with all these crazy little kids when he was a doctor, and nobody really knew that. But you know what? That's where the Doc Scofield. It's not just some Gilligan's Island or something.
Yeah,
it's
I appreciate that. I appreciate that, Pete. We're not gonna lose any sleep over it. But I agree with you that during his 6 years of racing, he was pretty dominant. No question about that.
Yeah,
and GT was dominant. And I would say that Jeff, myself, Greg Hill, and other riders were very important to GT's success in those early days. Even though GT had a team before I came on, because they started in '72. They had old school guys back, racing banana seats out in Northridge or whatever. Yeah. But the real team started with me and the team when we started flying to races and really putting GT on the map. Yeah. Yes.
Well, hey. Well, thanks a lot. And you guys have a great day. God bless you and the family, like always. Yeah. And I want to just thank everybody out there for this. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And thank you again, Doc Scofield. And we'll talk to you soon. And stay healthy. Have a great day.
Thanks for your time.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.